Our sacred words in the vocabulary of our faith have such power to them. It's why we want to say them carefully. That in many ways, it's like running around with a stick of dynamite. That we don't want to treat those sacred words the same way we see dynamite thrown around in the old Western movies, where someone lights a stick of dynamite and carries it around like simple fireworks. That one of those sacred words we want to say carefully because it has such power to it is the word brokenness. That we use that word oftentimes to talk about the brokenness of creation or the brokenness of humanity. That it's an important word as we speak about the need for God's grace and the problems that surround us. That when we look out on the world and we see the pain and heartache of poverty or oppression, prejudice or indifference, unethical or harmful behavior, we see evidence of the world's brokenness. But if we're not careful in how we say that word, we can inadvertently marginalize people. That when we start to talk about the brokenness of humanity or the brokenness in people's lives, we must be careful. Whether it is people who have suffered the pain of divorce, or those who are wrestling with the heartache of depression, or those who have been released from incarceration. If we say they are broken, we can end up marginalizing them in a way that becomes more of the problem and less of the solution. That we have to remember we're talking about people and not projects. That a person is more than someone that just needs to be fixed. So we never, in our language of faith, want to marginalize anyone. That we speak of brokenness because we speak of grace. So we also have to speak of grace in such a way that doesn't lead to marginalization. That there is brokenness in us and in others and in all of creation, but we shouldn't seek out brokenness in those places and then try to apply grace. We should simply apply grace, and it will lead us to brokenness. It's like walking around a dark house in the middle of the night and carrying a flashlight. Light that is necessary to navigate our way so we don't stumble over something or stub our toe. That someone is bound to say to us, hey, can you bring that light over here and shine it in this area? That if we begin with grace, it always leads us to the places that need it the most. That grace is like a tool that we have to learn how to use well. That if we open up the manual, the how-to instructions for grace, there is one page where in large capital letters it simply says humility. That when we speak of brokenness or of grace, we have to do so in a tone of humility. Otherwise, we do more harm than we do good. Like the word brokenness, there are many words we have to say carefully. In fact, linguists tell us that entire languages are changed because they are not said well. They call it lazy mouth syndrome, when a word is not pronounced correctly over time or used the way it is supposed to. It will be changed or even lost for good. So we say these sacred words like the word brokenness carefully. We have to think about how we use it and why we are using it and to what end we are using it. What are the consequences, the results of how we say it? It's like the advice that we find in Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 2. Don't be quick with your mouth or say anything hastily before God, because God is in heaven, but you are on earth. Therefore, let your words be few. That when words are changed or lost, the good news is they can be saved. We can reclaim them and redefine them and rediscover them, like the word brokenness. In fact, Hebrew is one of the best known examples of a comeback language. That back in the 2nd century, it was on the brink of being lost forever, a language only used in prayer or in liturgy. But then, in the latter part of the 19th century, led by intentional group of rabbis, the Hebrew language was revitalized. It was used carefully and thoughtfully, to the point that this language of faith was revitalized. That people now not only know Hebrew, but speak Hebrew. And our sacred words, that as they are used less, we can still reclaim them. We can redefine them and rediscover them for our lives and for the language of faith. That we can say words like brokenness carefully in an effort to revitalize our entire language of faith. It can help us see creation and God differently. It can help us understand ourselves and others differently in powerful and life-giving ways. That we can apply the grace of God to creation without marginalizing anyone. Because our brokenness is one of the things that we share in common with all of humanity. That it can create empathy. It can foster community. It can call us to action. It does not have to diminish us. It can sustain us as it leads us to points of connection where grace can emerge. That for our sacred words, we can reclaim them, redefine them, and rediscover them. Amen.